all going to go through hard times. Thinking about ways to get through that is really important.
What can we do to take ownership in those moments and work through those difficulties?
The trap for leaders is that when things get tough, when you're tired, you're grumpy, this is when you can react in a way that can cause some issues.
When things get hard, what helps me most is topic for today. When things get hard, when things get tough, and what can we do to take ownership in those moments and work through those difficulties?
Yeah, I think this is a great topic because we're all going to go through hard times. We're all going to have difficulties. It doesn't matter who you are in life, whether you're born with everything going for you or whether you're born in a tough situation. We're all going to endure hardships, right? We're all going to have tragedies that happen. We're all going to have things that don't go our way. And so I think thinking about ways to get through that is really important.
Yeah, something that I've learned in my life is that when things get hard, what helps me most is when I actually focus on others, when I focus on other people around me as opposed to myself, because it's really easy when things get difficult to focus inward on your pain, your tragedy, your feelings, your emotions, your ego. And when you actually look up and out, detach, and focus on the people around you, it's so much easier to get through a difficult situation.
The trap for leaders is that when things get tough, right, that's when you can lose your cool, right? That's when you can get emotional. And I've fallen into that trap many times, in the past. When you're tired, you're grumpy, or you're hungry, or, your things aren't going your way, you're feeling some pressure. This is when you can react in a way that can cause some issues. And I think when you need to think about that from a leadership perspective, when you're feeling that way, other people are feeling that way too. And if you're focused on yourself instead of them, that's not a good thing. It means you're putting yourself before the team. So it's a great example where it can help you when you're not worried about you, but you're worried about other people on your team. You're worried about how they're doing. You're worried about their morale. You're worried about getting them some food or getting them some sleep or helping them through some challenging times. I think that's what good leaders do. And I think that enables us to make it through those challenging times.
Yeah, I've seen this play out in my life because I have been suckered into running marathons. I don't know why I keep doing this. I don't like running, and yet I keep consistently getting asked to be in these things, and I set myself up.
You keep telling me you don't like running, but how many marathons have you run now?
I think this one coming up will be like my 8th, maybe 9th. But point is, the first one I ran, I did this because it was for a dear friend of ours, and it was in honor of him. And it was a year after he had passed. And so the pull to do this was what was driving me. But training for that marathon, I was by myself, and it was hard. It sucked so bad. And the race was difficult. Everything about it was difficult, but I powered through because I was focusing on this other individual and focusing on the people that cared about him. And it was for a good cause. So that kind of helped me, but it was hard. Years later, I convinced my dad to run a marathon, and it started smaller. I convinced him to do a 10K, Tough Mudder. He hadn't run in probably 20 or 30 years. And I was like, listen, Dad, we can do this together. And all of a sudden I'm focusing on him. I remember I showed up to the house for our first run. We were going to do a mile. This is not a big deal. And he walks out of the house in jeans and like an old baseball cap. And I'm thinking, man, we are starting at ground zero. So we ran a mile, we walked, we ran it, we finished this mile. My dad thinks he's going to die. And I realized we've got a long way to go. Certainly the marathon wasn't even in our mind yet. We're just training for this 10K race. But we showed up, we worked together, we supported one another. We did that first 10K, then that we moved on to the half marathon. Then he was like, don't ever ask me to do a marathon. I'm not doing this. And of course, he got the bug like I do. He was also convinced. So we trained for the full marathon. We finished that marathon. And the whole time in the training, it sucks. I don't like running. I hate it. And yet, when I'm running by myself, it is exponentially more difficult to get out of my own head about how much I don't like this activity. But when I was running with him, I was focused on him. I was focusing on trying to keep his morale up. I was focused on helping and planning and executing this training run and encouraging him, that it took me out of my own head about how bad this was. And it always helped me focus on the actual task at hand and get out of all the feelings and emotions I had around this activity. And it was really cool because I got to see him accomplish something incredible. And now, years later, he's gearing up to run, I think, his 5th marathon at the the age 70. And he's the one now motivating me. Like the tables have turned and he's the one on these runs that are like, come on, we've got to do this. And it's really fun to recognize for myself in this relationship that when I focused on him, my pain and suffering was diminished significantly.
I think what's cool about that too is, as you started to do that, and I was kind of watching this from afar. I was like, oh, that's really, really cool. And the fact that you're doing it with your dad. So you get to spend this time with your dad. And obviously training for a marathon, you got to put hours and hours in. And if you're just out there kind of on your own, right, but what you're actually doing is spending time with your dad. Those are precious hours, right? That you can never get back. And one day you'll want all those, as many of those as you can possibly get. And so I think it's a really cool thing to think about when we're talking about what winning looks like. When you can organize something like that. Obviously, it's helping you get through the tough times, but you're getting to spend that time with your dad, spend time with the people that you love and care about. That's most important.
And not only that, you're right. Those hours of running and training with him, I am so grateful for because I heard stories about my dad that I had never known. So we had conversations that I never would have had the benefit of that time had it not been for this difficult thing we were doing together. What's really cool is since then, I moved away. My dad then needed a new training partner. He recognized the same thing that I did, that having a training partner and focusing on them helped him. So he convinced my niece, his granddaughter, to run her first marathon, which they trained together and ran together. And now he's convinced my brother to run his first marathon. So coming up in July, we will run what my dad is swearing is going to be his last marathon. And it will be, his 70th birthday, my brother's 50th birthday, his first marathon. So that effort of focusing on others transcends down the line. I helped my dad, he helped my niece, he's now helping my brother. And it becomes this ripple effect that when we put our focus on other people, we can help and encourage them in so many different ways and enable them to help and encourage the people behind them.
Yeah, I think this concept, in Jocko's book, Leadership Strategy and Tactics, he talks about it's not about you, right? It's all on you, but it's not about you. And I think as a leader, when you realize that your team winning, losing, it's not about you. It's about the other people on your team. And when you put those people before yourself, that's what you should do as a leader. And that's helped me through the toughest times of my life. Certainly going through training, when you're going through basic SEAL training or BUDS, which is basic underwater demolition SEAL training. It's about a 7-month training program. We have about a 70 to 80% attrition rate going through training. So just to put numbers on that, we started my class with 193 guys. And we started, most people end up quitting during Hell Week. So we started with 193 guys and we finished with 44 guys at the end of that. And only 18 of those guys started with a 193 and made it through in one shot without getting rolled or injured or anything like that. And I was one of the 18 guys that made it through. And so that were part of that 44. We started our Hell Week, I think it was 101 guys. Started in Hell Week. And so Hell Week is 5 continuous 24-hour days, nonstop physical activity. I know you certainly know this, for Flynn going through. And that's actually the first time I met your husband, Flynn, was when I was an instructor. We'd come back from Ramadi, I think this was 2007 maybe, and we were, and I was going out and working Hell Week. And so Flynn was the class officer, which I had been just 4 years earlier going through training. But this is, these guys are suffering. They're going through, they don't get to sleep. They're 72 hours into nonstop physical activity before they get their first time to sleep, and they get like an hour.
A nap,
which is absolutely, it's miserable. So very difficult training program. I think we had 101 guys start our Hell Week and we had 40 graduate from that. So, this was, this is where most people end up quitting, the training program. And, as some of the students will try to say, hey, you should be the gray man going through training. You don't want the instructors you don't want to stand out. So the instructors are singling you out. As the class officer, I was a senior person in the class, just like Flynn was. I couldn't not stand out, right? Obviously, there's a lot of scrutiny on me, but I thought, like, while some people might think that's a detriment, when you're in a leadership position, I think it's a tremendous attribute for the reasons that you're talking about, because instead of focusing on yourself and thinking about yourself, you're focused on your team. As a boat crew leader, you've got 6 other guys in the boat crew. Most boat crews are about seven guys running around these big 200-pound rubber boats that you're carrying around everywhere, paddling out through the surf zone. And you're focused on the team and not yourself. And that is, instead of just suffering and thinking about how terrible the suffering is and how tired you are, how physically exhausted you are, you're focused on the team and how are your guys doing? And if, the guys up in the front of the boat that are carrying the weight of the boat and pulling that boat along, you need to rotate them out and maybe put them in the back of the boat so they can get as much rest as is possible while you're running with a 200-pound boat, on your head for miles. So, but that's something that is, I think, super important, and it carries right into combat operations as well. Because when you're leading combat operations, you're not worried about bullets taking your head off. You're not worried about it blown up and injured. You're worried about your guys. You're thinking about your guys and what's going on. And Jocko and I talked about when we came back from Ramadi in late 2006, after just violent combat operations almost every single day. And we took the first casualties of the war. Mark Lee in my platoon, an incredible SEAL, incredible team. It was the first SEAL killed in the war in Iraq. And we lost Ryan Jobe, who was gravely wounded, later died of those wounds. Mike Mansour, who was killed in our sister platoon. These were incredible teammates, incredible SEALs. It was just absolutely soul crushing to lose those guys, and just devastating to the entire team. And it's a burden as a leader that when I came home and didn't bring all my guys home with me, it's a burden that never goes away. It never goes away. And Jocko and I talked about coming home from that, and when you get home and you realize all of a sudden there isn't this weight of thinking like every single operation, it's like a gigantic weight lifted off your shoulders where you realize, and it took me like a few days, maybe even weeks to kind of recognize like, why do I feel different now? Why do I feel different? And it was this idea that there wasn't this gigantic weight on your shoulders every moment of like, man, I don't want to lose any more of my guys. I want to do everything I can to try to bring them all home. And that to me is, every leader should be focused on the team. And I think when you're going through some really tough combat situations like that, I think that can help you get through. When you're focused on the people around you, you care about them more than you care about yourself. I think it enables you to get through the most difficult and tough times. It's certainly even losing those guys, right? We all just putting our arms around each other and supporting each other and helping each other through that is what got us through.
It reminds me of our teammate, Rob Jones, a Marine who lost his legs in Afghanistan. He stepped on an IED, and he talks about it and he tells his story. And every time it gets me, it's hard not to just be in the back of our conference muster when he's up there on stage, like ugly crying, because he talks about this moment and this transition for him of realizing that his life was immediately different than what he thought it was going to be. Everything had changed in that moment. And he talks about having the feeling on the battlefield of maybe he doesn't even want to live, to the transition he had in the hospital where he's asking for a pirate hat, which I always think is such an interesting thing, him to come out of the situation, to wake up and to ask for a pirate hat. And he describes it as, I was looking for this pirate hat because I realized that I was about to go see my mom. This is the part that gets me. Realizing that this was going to be the hardest thing his mom would ever have to go through, to come and see her son in this way. And he thought that if he could just put a smile on her face, if she could see this hat on his head, she might feel a little comforted. And he focused his effort on her, and he focused his effort on his teammates and the people around him with this silly little hat. And as he focused on them, it changed his perspective for his own situation. And now he's become such a model example of someone who takes ownership in their life, of their attitude and how they respond in difficult times. All of that because he transitioned from thinking inward about himself and being a victim in this bad thing that happened to him, and instead focusing on others and how he could help and support them.
Yeah, Rob has an amazing attitude about that, and I think that has played a huge part in that. Is that Rob he was thinking about others and not himself, right? He could have been angry. He could have been bitter about what happened to him. He could be, the fact that he's a young man in the prime of his life, both his legs, lost above the knee. He knows he's going to be, disabled for the rest of his life and all the hardship he's going to have to deal with. And he's thinking about his mom and how she's going to deal with that and what he can do to try to help her through that. And I think it's such an amazing and inspiring example. And what's cool about Rob is he's taken that story and helped so many other people as well, who are going through tough challenges, going through tough times, and help them realize that even when we're going through things that we can't control. We can take ownership of how we respond. We can own our attitude going through that. And I think that's the real right attitude to have. Mark Lee's mom, Debbie Lee, we call her Mama Lee, who's just one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. From the moment that I talked to her on the phone, I had never met her before, but her son was one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. And we just lost Mark. He'd been killed in combat. And this is her beloved, youngest son, her baby boy. For the very first time, I'm talking to her on the phone, and I'm in Jocko's office in Ramadi. And this just happened. I have no idea what I'm going to say. I have no idea. What can I possibly say to this lady who lost her son? I was in charge of her son. I was his platoon commander. I was responsible for him, and he got killed. And I have no idea what I could possibly say to her to console her. I have no idea how, what the conversation could be like. I never even thought about what I might say in a situation like this. And I just picked up the phone and talked to her, and to my utter shock and surprise, instead of me consoling her like she's consoling me, she said, "Leif, how are you doing? How are the guys doing? What do you guys need? I'm praying for you. I'm thinking about you guys. I know that you're suffering just like we are." And it was just, she has the most incredible attitude of service and help to others, that no matter the tragic pain that she must be feeling as a mom, that I can only imagine, as horrible as it was for me to lose Mark, that it's tens of thousands or millions of times more for her as Mark's mom, to experience that. And yet she's thinking about me and Mark's teammates. And I've seen her take that same attitude and that same mindset of service through the tragic loss of her son as she launched her charity organization, America's Mighty Warriors, to help veterans and their families. And she's taken that pain and tragedy and used that to help others. And I think no matter what we've gone through in life, if we're thinking about other people, I've seen the people who've been through some of the most incredible challenges that I could ever imagine in my life. And if they've taken that and used that as a lesson learned to help others that are going through similar tragedies, going through difficulties, they've used that as a way to help them. Those are the people that are the best off in life, that are the most resilient people, that can make it through the hardest possible hardships that we can even wrap our minds around, because they're using that for good to help others. They're thinking about other people rather than themselves. And I think it is just a testament to the power of when you focus on other people and how you can help others instead of yourself, we can make it through anything.
Yeah, Mama Lee. So Mark and I share a birthday, which I always thought was really special and a great way to remember someone who sacrificed for my freedoms. And every year on my birthday, once Mama Lee found that out, she sends me on a day that is likely a very difficult day for her to remember her son and to celebrate his birthday and remember that he's not here anymore. She sends me flowers, and she reaches out to me and sends me a text to check in on me and say happy birthday. And she goes out of her way to do it. She's done it for years. And to your point, such an incredible example of what we're talking about, which is when things are difficult and things are hard, what can we control? And she has focused her efforts, Rob has focused his efforts on the people around them, which helps us to navigate these difficult times. I see this play out in the business setting in 2020 when COVID hit. At the end of March, I remember calling you guys and saying, hey, listen, we've had 15 contracts voided. We've had multiple clients calling and saying, hey, we can't do this training. We don't have the budget. We've got to postpone. And there was a lot of uncertainty. And our team felt a little bit of that pressure, like what's going on? The world at that time was in disarray. And there was a lot of concern about what happens next. And you guys right out the gate said, listen, we know that what people need most right now was leadership. And at that point, 90% of our business was in-person training. We didn't have an avenue for online training. And so it was very difficult to think, how do we help them when we can't be in person, when all of a sudden that opportunity is gone? And you guys determined what we're going to do is we're going to pivot very quickly, and we're going to set up these free weekly, 3 times a week. If you remember back then, online calls, and we're going to set up these webinars, and we're going to be on there Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we're going to teach these leadership principles, and we're going to focus on driving an impact. Every client who needs to void a contract, we're going to do it with no questions asked. Any client that needs to postpone training, we're going to do it with no questions asked. We're going to prioritize the relationship, focus on how we can help them, and put our efforts there, hoping that when this all settled, which it did, we could maintain those relationships and regain those opportunities within our business. And what it did was it benefited us far beyond what we even imagined, because it paved the way for us to create a whole online training academy that allows us to now teach people in a different format and serve our clients more effectively, both in person and online. So again, focusing outward on others allowed us to navigate a difficult situation that everyone was dealing with at that time.
There was so much uncertainty, and we got crushed as a company. And are we going to be able to meet payroll? How are we going to survive through this? And our focus was on how can we help our clients. And so many of our clients were in worse situations. We had people who had to furlough 2/3 of their workforce, and they didn't know how they were going to make it through. And so just picking up the phone and calling. We didn't need a contract. We didn't need a check. We didn't need to be paid. We just needed to help them get through those difficult times. And that was something that enabled us to help those companies navigate through that and really think about what winning looked like long term, thinking strategically, implementing the laws of combat. We know this is how a team has to perform, particularly in challenging and difficult situations. When we're going through hard things, what do we need to do? Go back to the basics, right? Cover, move, simple, prioritize and execute, decentralized command. We got to take extreme ownership of problems, get problem solved. And that's what we helped our clients through. And of course, that built into more opportunities as things came back online and the world opened back up. And we proved without a doubt the impact of these leadership principles through the most challenging times possible.
Yeah, you and Jocko came out the gate, and you had all of us on the executive team basically printed a list of all of our clients and said, divvy this up. We want you to call each of them with no intent. This is not for getting additional business. This is not for trying to maintain our business in the midst of all this. To your point, we lost tons of money, tons of revenue. And there was a lot of uncertainty if we were ever going to be able to get this back. But the intent wasn't about salvaging our business. The intent was maintaining those relationships and trying to add value. And so we called up every one of our clients. We offered ourselves regularly for advice as they were going through difficulties. How can we help you through this? And again, the outcome at the end of all of that was to our benefit, because those relationships were maintained, and it provided a way for us to figure out new ways to serve our clients and drive even more of an impact. So difficult times come, we focus on others. That is always going to be the best option for finding a pathway to solve those problems.
And our focus there was not just to maintain relationships, right, but to actually help those companies, those teams lead through the most difficult times so that they could ultimately be successful. And when they win, we win, everybody wins.
So how can someone shift from their instinct, which is to think internal about the things that are, painful for them, and to shift to that we mindset, that servant leadership mindset? I
think number one, you have to put your ego in check, realize that most of us are just seeing the world through, the lens that we look through is selfish. It's about us. We're thinking about us. And when you start to think about others, this is what I actually need to do, is think about others. Whether you're in a leadership position and you're in charge of a team, or whether you're an individual contributor just in charge of yourself and your piece of the mission, you can still think about others. You can help others. When you see people going through difficult times, go help them. What can you do to take something off their plate? And it may not just be asking to say, hey, I'd love to help. What can I do? If there's something you can do, do it. If there's something you can do, like go, even just reaching out to people. And sometimes it's simply as we're going through a hard time, like going through Hell Week. One of my teammate, Brian Bill, who was later killed in action in Afghanistan, was an incredible SEAL, incredible teammate. And one of the things he would always say is good times. He had this big smile on his face. We're going through Hell Week, and you'd look at him, giant smile on his face, and he'd just be like, good times. And we're laughing about how much it actually sucks and how difficult it is. So even when you just if you can just give someone some encouragement simply by like, hey man, I know this is tough. We're going to make it through this. And when you can put a humorous spin on that, that can help people get through some tough times. So I think look for ways that you can do that, whether it's a teammate, whether it's somebody in a different department, whether it's a customer that's going through a hard time, whether it's a family member, where you can reach out to them, be there for them. And even just knowing like, hey, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about you. I know you're going through a tough time. I'm here to help. Want to do this for you. That just showing that to someone, they realize they're not alone, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. It's not always in the big gestures. Oftentimes that effort is in the small interactions we have with people. We talked earlier about Rob Jones, and this is one of my favorite examples of Rob Jones thinking about other people, something so small, these small interactions, just looking over and saying good times. Rob Jones figured out that our accountant on our team looks at expense reports and has to go through every single expense item for everyone on our team. And she had asked him, and she had asked him a random question about a restaurant that he had gone to before that she had heard about. And he was like, wait a minute, you look at every single one of those? And she's like, yeah, that's her job. And so he figured out a small thing he could do to make her job a little more fun, focus on, again, the team, is every time he submits an expense report in the memo, he gives a food review for what he ordered and what he thought about the restaurant. And it makes it a little more interesting for Taylor, a little more fun. And that's a great way to, again, focusing on others. How do we help them? How do we make it more fun for them and show them that we're here to support? That's a small gesture that probably means a lot to her. Those are the things we need to focus on as leaders, the small ways we can help others through difficult times. With that, our immediate action drill for today is to spend some time thinking about the people around us and identify one specific person that might need just a little bit more of your help and support, a little bit more of that motivation, and focus on ways that you could support them. Check in and find a way to help.
It may be just going and giving them a smile and saying, hey, good times. If they're going through some hard times, it may be showing up to the team that has to work all weekend, to get a project done, and you just show up there to support them, or you bring them pizza or whatever it is. It could be a family member. You see that you've got a spouse who's struggling or a kid who's struggling with a particular issue. Just putting your arm around them, letting them know it's okay, taking something off their plate that you can. Wherever you could support, think about others. And remember, if you're going through hard times, there's others that are going through hard times too. But when you focus on others and you put the team before yourself, that's going to enable you to be a lot more effective as a leader in whatever capacity that you're leading, so that you can lead and win.
Find us on YouTube or wherever you like to listen to podcasts, and do all the things you're supposed to do. Like, subscribe, share, leave us a review, but most importantly, send us the leadership challenges that you're facing right now so we can target our next episodes to helping you understand how to apply the principles of extreme ownership to solve in those challenges.
Check out our free resources at echelonfront.com, or you can take the next step and join the Extreme Ownership Academy, our online training platform, where we go deeper on these principles and teach you how to apply them in your business and in your life.